This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
Babylon has existed for longer than we realize. And even today, the physical city of Babylon itself has never actually been destroyed. Doug Hamp shares the seemingly immortal survivability of Babylon and why he believes, both literally and spiritually, that it will rise again to become the centerpiece of Revelation fulfilled. Because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun has set, and this is Shabbat Night Live. All right, you can relax now. Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. It's Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. You've heard of the city of Babylon, right? But it's much, much older than we think. And despite what we may assume, the city itself has never been destroyed. It's true. It just stopped being used. No army has actually ever destroyed it. Maybe that's why it plays an important role in the book of the Revelation as a metaphor and maybe even literally where it exists in Iraq today. That's what Doug Hamp is proposing tonight in the third and final episode of The Truth in Fiction. This episode is The Rise of Babylon. Let's talk about that with my co-host, Tiffany Panaccio, and the one and only Michael Rood. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good to be here, Scott.
You were telling me before the cameras came on something about Babylon and Abraham.
That's right. He lived in the capital city. He was he lived in the capital and before the Elamites took over Babylon.
Okay, cool.
And you said he was the first Hebrew.
Yeah, Hebrew means to cross over. And Yeshua was baptized at Beit Abrah. Beit, the house of Abrah, Hebrew, house of crossing over.
Okay.
It was right below my house in Israel.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
it
wow.
was right down below the house.
Okay, wow, interesting. So there's a lot of history with Babylon, a lot older than we think. And speaking of Babylon, I was joking with Tiffany, Babylon, somebody up here is having a baby, and it ain't me or Michael.
I hope not.
Despite what the world thinks we can do, we can't do that. So,
yeah.
So Tiffany, you are far along here, obviously. So when are you due?
At the beginning of the Gregorian New Year
Okay, very good. Well, congratulations. Thank you for being here. I know that it's, some days you can be here, some days you can't because baby has a mind of his own. So
yeah.
Anyway.
It's funny that you said Babylon because my son's name, my older son, is Elon, and I called him Babylon for the longest time until I realized, and I was like, I'm calling him Babylon, and I was like, we're throwing that nickname away real quick. I was gone.
Well, maybe you can redeem Babylon. Maybe that's what the idea was. Anyhow, so Michael, you have two books in front of you there. Speaking of Babylon
Yes,
and the rise of Babylon, the Revelation, that is a real. I think, I've said this before, that I think people will pick up this book just because of its title, that Revelation, the fifth gospel, everybody goes, oh, the fifth gospel, how dare you, there's only 4 gospels. Well, no, that's not true. You told me before about this.
In the manuscripts, it's called the fifth gospel. I mean, it's called a gospel, and it's number 5 in our reckoning. So it's the fifth gospel.
Right, well that makes sense, right? I mean the Torah and the whole of the Bible, of the Old Testament, if you want to call it that, told about Yeshua coming. The Gospels, as we know them, are when he was here, and the fifth gospel, Revelation, is when he's coming back.
Yes, that's right.
It's
the whole picture.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very fitting because Deuteronomy is known as the Word. It's Moses' recounting of everything that was given in the first 4. And then you have the 4 Gospels, and the book of Revelation is from Yeshua, the Gospel. And it kind of does that same thing that Moses did in Deuteronomy. It recounts, right?
And if people understand Hebrew correctly, they'll know that if, this cycle of events, once it happens once, it isn't one and done. Hebrew cycles, and the same things happen again, and they're fulfilled this way and fulfilled that way. And so, if we have this Western mindset that, well, once it's done, we'll never understand the Bible properly. So we need to understand that these things come again, especially with Revelation.
Yeah.
All right, so we have only a couple of weeks left for our love gift, so we just wanted to quickly tell you about that. This is the only opportunity we get to tell you. The store isn't open anyway, so we're just going to tell you about it now. So keep it in the back of your mind till after Shabbat. This month's teaching is Biblical Dating by Rochelle Siefkin. Remember Steve Siefkin, who's come here and told us all about how to think of the Bible as a law book, as literally like laws for a country, how to run a society. That really helped me learn about the Bible differently. Anyway, his wife Rochelle talks about dating and how we need to think about that differently. Think about it as courting, and more than that, even if you're not even looking for a mate, it's look inside yourself, because some people are looking for a mate because they're empty inside and they're trying to fill that void and they don't even realize it. And I think that's the more important message here, is if you're really looking for a mate, but are you, look inside yourself and try and correct those things that you think are wrong with yourself. And it's sort of like a journey you go with Yehovah instead of another person. So really interesting take on biblical dating. And so that's for a gift of $50 or more. If for $100 or more, get this wonderful clock. Go ahead, Tiffany. I don't know which way to hold it, because we were looking at the numbers and we can't make heads or tails of it. But
6 and Echad is over here.
For some reason, 6 is at the top on this particular one. I don't know, whatever. And so
you can tell the time. Just set 12 o'clock where you want it.
Well, and as someone in the studio had said here, our designer, Mark, he said, well, isn't it how like the center of the day is 6 o'clock? So is it right or isn't it? I don't know. So
could be
that could
the 6th hour.
Right. So anyway, it's a beautiful clock, and nonetheless, and then for a gift of $300, you'll get all 3 of these things, including the third thing here, beautiful stained glass shalom wind chime, I guess is what you could call this.
I suppose, or just like a hanging, you can put it in your window.
In the window too,
yeah,
right?
in the window. Mm-hmm.
Bring in some beautiful light to your home, so yeah. Anyway, we like to give you these things because, Michael, as you always say, if people are going to support this ministry, we'd like to give them a little something in return.
Yeah, this is a good thing.
Yeah. And especially right now, because we're looking towards the end of the year, this is when we do our planning, right? This is when we decide what can we do next year, what can we not do? Where do we have to cut back? Sometimes that's a really hard question. We don't want to have to answer that question. We've had to do some of that this year, quite honestly. I mean, it's people are really scared about the future, that type of thing. So, we need you to be rude, to be really bold with us. Don't be scared. We're going to keep going here. We're going to keep bringing out the word. We're going to keep, going in people's faces and saying, hey, this is what the word says. You need to know this because the time is coming when, all things may be cut off and you're going to need to know the truth. So all that to say, thank you for standing with us. Now, the physical city of Babylon has never been destroyed. Did you know that? Doug Hamp tonight is going to share the seemingly immortal survivability of Babylon and why he believes, both literally and spiritually, that it will rise again to become the centerpiece of Revelation fulfilled. But first, here's the Kiddush with Michael.
Some of the traditions in modern-day Judaism are what Yeshua said are takanot, laws which change biblical law, which are forbidden, and Yeshua said don't do them. But other traditions are remembrances of good things in the past, and they are a shadow picture of good things to happen in the future. On the Sabbath, we take 2 challah loaves, 2 loaves of bread. This represents the manna, the double portion that we received on the 6th day. This was God's provision for us. And this is what it continues to mean to us today. When Yeshua, just before his crucifixion, the night before his crucifixion, at the Last Supper that he had with his disciples, he took bread and he blessed, not the bread, he blessed the Most High. And he said, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And he broke the bread and he said, this is my body, which is broken for you. As often as you do this, remember this. By his stripes, we were healed. And then he took the cup and he said, in the prayer of Melchizedek to Abraham, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this, what you have been doing for 1,000 years from the time of Abraham, this represents the renewed covenant in my blood. This is how I will pay for the broken covenant I will pay the death penalty and do this until I come.
On the brink of nuclear war, philanthropist Alexander Therion sets out to create a utopia where technology eliminates poverty, disease, and death. Sounds like a pretty good idea. Two powerful beings with supernatural abilities threaten to frustrate Alexander's vision. Only with the help of an Israeli Special Forces commander can the two be neutralized. You know, you can't make this stuff up. Or can you? Well, this one is made up, but it kind of sounds like world events. And sometimes the world events are stranger than fiction. Well, let's talk about fiction that may lend others to believe the reality of the Bible with Dr. Doug Hamp. Welcome, sir.
Hey,
back
thank
to
you.
Shabbat Night Live.
Yes.
So yeah, I just read the back of your book, Regenesis Code. So this is the book we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. And as we were just talking about, I mean, sometimes world events are stranger than fiction. You know,
Right.
if we went through what has been going on in our world in the last 6 months, and you told that to somebody in the past, you know, in 2024, this is going to happen. Oh, and then this is going to happen. And then guess what? That's
Right.
going to happen. You'll be like, what? You're crazy.
Yeah.
No way that's going to happen. But it did. And so, you know, we have to maybe think outside the box where, you know, we have our ideas about the Bible and the way it's all going to go down, a revelation and all. Yep, I got a case, no problem, case closed. The truth is, none of us has it 100% locked down.
Right.
Because we're not there yet. I think Jehovah is going to reveal this to us. He's going to reveal this to different people. And we all need to get together with our ideas. And so like, oh, that fits into this idea. Oh, that fits into what Jehovah showed me. Okay, great.
Right.
So, and that's what we're doing here. That's what you're doing here with Regenesis Code, right? I mean, this is a fictional book, but I think in the first episode of what we did here, I like to call it a parable.
Yes.
Because that's really what it is. I mean, Yeshua told parables. They were not literal stories of real people.
Right.
They were illustrations to show someone, and you've told us the example there of telling, or the difference between telling and showing.
Yes.
Yeshua wanted to show something.
Right.
So Regenesis Code is trying to show us something, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, so with the main character, as we read on the back here.
Caleb Baruch.
Caleb Baruch, is he the Israeli Special Forces guy?
He's the
in
Israeli
this story?
Special Forces, yeah.
Okay, so tell us about Caleb. Why is Israel? I mean, Hollywood focuses mainly on, of course, this is supposed to be the antithesis of Hollywood, but you know, they usually focus on the heroes being American.
Right.
Most times.
Yeah.
Why Israeli?
Well, you know, it's funny, even a lot of, I remember I watched this tribulation story by TBN. I used to live in Southern California, so I went to the actual studios there, not far from my house.
Okay.
And I got to watch their version of the end times. And it was all about America. You know, America, the president of America, he was going to save the day, and you know, he was sort of the hero.
Sounds like Independence Day.
This is what we call ethnocentrism, right?
Okay.
Where we Americans think that we have the greatest country, we're the best, we are the ones that save the world. And hey, I love my country, but we're not the only people out there. I lived in Israel for 3 years, and Israel's a cool place, you know. And Israel should be, in my opinion, at the center of the story of the end times, because it is the center of the story of the end times, right?
Right.
It's all going to happen there, right? That's where the whole focal point is. That's where, of course, Armageddon is going to happen. That's where there's going to be a temple where the Antichrist will go and declare himself to be God, et cetera, right? So that is a major point. So I really felt that having an Israeli as the main character just made a lot more sense. And you know, let's face it, Israel has always been the scapegoat for the world since pretty much as long as we can remember, right? It's kind of much Israel's fault, right? If something goes wrong, it's probably their fault. But when I was living there, I remember there were doctors that were going from Israel. They would go into Gaza. They would give their time for free. They were trying to help the people in Gaza. I remember, I remember when Clinton had Yitzhak Rabin, and he had Yasser Arafat, and they were trying to come up with a two-state solution. Yitzhak Rabin was willing to pretty much give away the farm And it was Yasser Arafat who said, no, we can't do that, right? Because at the core of Palestinian philosophy is that they want to see Israel thrown into the sea, right? A lot of people don't understand that, right? So it's not that there aren't some good Palestinians. I think there's lots of quote unquote good Palestinians, okay, nice people. But at the core of their basic national philosophy is that we cannot be friends with you, Israel.
Right.
Where Israel's like, hey, we'd be happy to be friends, or at least, decent neighbors, right? And we want a neighbor that's not trying to kill us all the time, right? And so Israel is almost willing to bend over backwards to make peace. Obviously, with October 7th, we saw that it doesn't really work out too well, which is terribly unfortunate. And I don't want to try to, sort of do the armchair quarterback thing and figure out what all should happen. I don't know. It's complicated. But insofar as the book goes, we have this scenario where it's actually Israel. So we have a scenario where there's a nuclear bomb, a dirty bomb that's potentially going to go off in Damascus, right? And it's Israel, and they say they send a special forces team to try to disarm that bomb, right? They're trying to do the good thing. And
so wait a minute. So Israel's not trying to. So okay, because when you first told me about that, I thought, okay, so Damascus it turned into a ruinous heap. Okay, obviously that was Israel who did that, and we move on with whatever else we're talking about. You're telling me that Israel is trying to save Damascus.
yes.
Okay, that's a good twist.
Yep, they're trying to save Damascus, they're trying to do the right thing, but it's blamed on them. And this is sort of all, this is all set up, right? It was made to sort of happen this way so that Israel looks like the bad guy so that the world can come against Israel. And, now there's another good reason to hate Israel.
Right. You're trying to destroy the oldest city in the world. How dare you? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so Caleb Baruch, our hero, he takes this very personally because he was there. He was trying to do the right thing. He loses his brother in the process. Sorry if you're reading the book, a few spoilers here, but he loses his brother in the process. And so again, he takes this very, very personally. And so he's trying to figure out, okay, who did it, how to stop it. And he kind of goes on this quest to get some revenge and to get his pound of flesh, if you will. And in so doing, he discovers Alexander Thurian and whatnot. And maybe there's a better way to save the world. Okay, so this is all sort of the backdrop, right? But we have to look at Israel in this context because I think that when it all comes down, Israel is going to be put in this very difficult place of where they have to make choices if they're going to stand with the world, if they're going to stand, with the Antichrist, and it's going to be pretty precarious when it's all said and done. So that's kind of the basic sense of why we started with Damascus. It seemed like a good place to start. Will it go down that way? I don't know, but we do know it becomes a ruinous heap, and that seems like a pretty good catalyst to get everything else going.
Well, and that's the premise of how movies are made and this type of thing. Usually they take events that have happened and just insert them into the story as, oh, that was actually the piece of this story, and this is how our story rounds out. So that's all you're doing here. You're taking real events and putting them into a parable of how the end might look.
Exactly.
And who knows, we might be surprised in the end, oh, you know what? The download that Doug got from God was actually pretty right on.
Not that anybody's going to be going back and checking them when it all happens.
Let's check the manual. Yeah, no, none of
like,
that.
Doug was right, but we'll be like, yeah, but the world is messed up.
Man.
Yeah.
So Israel's falsely accused. And so Damascus is destroyed. And then so he wants his pound of flesh, our Caleb, our good guy here.
Yeah.
And so how does this round out? How does this flow in the story?
Well, so he's then approached by Alexander Thurian, who offers him all of the resources of Babylon to try to catch the bad guy, which is General Gurabian. He's the guy that is behind the destruction of Damascus. He's the guy who's behind framing Israel. And so Alexander Thurian says, I'll let you use all of my resources. We have these amazing supercomputer, quantum computer kind of things. A lot of the AI stuff, we couldn't even write it fast enough. I'm telling you.
Right.
We were writing, I'm like, we got to write faster because the world is changing so quickly.
AI is catching up.
It's going to be out. It's going to be all outdated by the time we get this thing out. It was crazy, But we were sort of trying to imagine where it was going to go, and and we're going there. You know, that's what's
Goodness.
so crazy, and it's happening fast. So yeah, he then goes to Babel. So Babel is really interesting, right? So, you know, again, there's lots of different opinions about what is Babylon the Great.
Sure.
You know, some people are convinced that Babylon the Great has to be America.
Yeah.
Some people think it's Rome, but I totally disagree, right? So when they talk about, well, you know, Peter, when he's writing to, you know, those in Babylon greet you, clearly he's referring to Rome, right? I totally disagree with that. You know, I studied with a really smart guy. His name is escaping me at the moment, but when I was in Israel, you know, I was studying about the Second Temple period, and what a lot of people don't know is that Babylon, as a cultural center, not as a city in particular, but sort of still as like sort of a greater metro area.
Okay.
It existed. Babylon was still a place. It never actually was destroyed. It sort of just fell out of use, right? So when Alexander the Great came through, Babylon was still very much there. That actually became his headquarters, right? And then it just sort of kind of wasted away slowly. But there were a lot of Jews that were still living there. In fact, it was the third largest Jewish population. It was Isaiah Gaffney. That's the name just came to me, okay? So I got to study with Isaiah Gaffney, a true scholar, you know, and he opened my eyes. I was like, oh my goodness, you know. So Babylon was still very much a Jewish center in the first century. And it just sort of kind of fell into disuse. And it even became part of the Roman Empire, right? So Babylon was still there. So when I think of Babylon, I'm like, why not just let Babylon be Babylon? I mean, it's so much simpler.
And we're talking about the literal Babylon in modern day Iraq.
In modern day Iraq, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, what's so interesting about this is you can actually go on Google Earth and you can put in, you know, Babylon or Babel, and you'll find the ancient ruins there. Those ancient ruins were also ancient ruins in the time of Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Ruins in the time of Nebuchadnezzar.
in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah.
Is our modern concept of dating contrary to the Bible? And if it is, how are we supposed to get to know someone before we get married?
Courting says that you have an intentional purpose that says, I'm looking at you as a spouse. And I think it adds a level of respect in the process versus our kind of more modern day theology of dating.
Using wisdom from the Bible and candid discussion about recognizing character over feelings, the influence of pornography, and the pitfalls of online dating, Rochelle Siefkin lays out Yehovah's ideals for both men and women in this month's Love Gift teaching, Biblical Dating. This teaching is not for sale and it's not available anywhere online. Instead, we'd like to give you this teaching as a thank you gift for donating to A Rood Awakening International. When you donate $50 as a love gift in November, you'll get Biblical Dating with Rochelle Siefkin on DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming on the michaelrood.tv app. Donate $100 and you'll get Biblical Dating, plus a Hebrew words wall clock featuring the Hebrew word for each number on the dial, created and printed by women in Jerusalem. Donate $300 and you'll get Biblical Dating, the Hebrew words wall clock, and a colorful stained glass sun catcher shaped in the word shalom, meaning peace in Hebrew. These gifts are a limited time offer from Michael Rood to thank you for your support. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift, or the $300 gift. Thank you. When you donate to receive the love gift, you ensure that exclusive teachings like Biblical Dating keep coming from A Rood Awakening International. Use your smartphone to scan the QR code on your screen to donate now and receive these limited time gifts. Or call 888-766-3610. Or get your gifts online with a donation at monthlylovegift.com.
So this is an ancient inscription. That's Nebuchadnezzar there on the right, and it's this tower that he is reconstructing. And so there's an inscription that goes with this. It says that he did not build this, Nebuchadnezzar's words, right? But it had been there for 42 ages, whatever an age is, and it had fallen into disuse, right? It had just fallen apart. But people 42 ages before him had built this thing. So I'm thinking, well, gee, Nebuchadnezzar was in Babylon. He's rebuilding a tower in Babylon. Maybe this is the Tower of Babel. I don't see why not.
That
Basically,
seems pretty obvious.
it seems obvious to me. It's a ziggurat. What is a ziggurat? A ziggurat is nothing more than a connection point between heaven and earth, right? Now, they didn't think that the earth had a dome over it. They didn't think the earth was flat and they were trying to touch the dome. What they were trying to do is actually build a gateway to the gods. And Bab El in ancient Akkadian literally means the gate of the gods. Right? And so there's these inscriptions about how they were believing that they were creating this gateway to the gods. In modern terminology, it was a wormhole. It was a stargate, if you will.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
And they were they were trying to connect between these two so that they could come and go and there could be open communication between gods and humans. And I think that's why God took such radical action by coming down personally, or whatever he did exactly, but he confused the languages. Because this was a complete inflection point for human history, right? This was, when God does something, he's like, okay, I'm going to flood the world. It's because there was something really bad that could have happened. When God came down at the Tower of Babel, it's because something really bad could have happened, right? And I think God's like, I got to put the kibosh on that. This is going to wreck us if I don't do something. And so he did, and so I think it would make complete sense if the Antichrist were like, you know what? We're going to get that thing going again. Now, it could involve CERN, it could involve a whole bunch of technological things, but I also think that there's going to be a literal place in Iraq, in Babylon, and I think there's going to be a lot of reconstruction, and we can make these things in fairly short order. It doesn't take that long to rebuild some of these things. At least the facades of them. I mean, if you go to Vegas, you have, you've got a pyramid, you've got the Eiffel Tower, you've got New York. I mean, it's all right
Liberty,
there.
yeah. So.
It's incredible, I mean, and so I think there's going to be a resurgence of the ancient gods. I think we're already seeing a resurgence of the ancient gods. For some people, the ancient gods never went away. I mean, they can hardly wait until these things are put out and manifest in open in daylight.
It's not right out of the realm of possibility either. I mean, if people really want to help Iraq, for example, rebuild, and they're not really ever rebuilt since the war there. I mean, what would be a better way than to create a tourist attraction?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, that's what is happening in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Right, with Neom.
Yep.
I mean, building roads like we've heard from Miles Jones, Dr. Miles Jones. There are roads pretty much going right past Mount Sinai now.
Right.
And they actually found artifacts 8 feet away from the road. I mean, they just missed them when they pull the plow through.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like that close. And so yes, of course, this is going to be a center of technology. They want to be the most technologically advanced city in the world, Neom. So, to have that as Babylon, not that far out of the realm of possibility. I mean, again, the world can change pretty quickly. I think we've all kind of come to realize that. We all think that the center of power has to be United States or New York City with the UN, but I think that can all change. Before the UN, it used to be the League of Nations. Yeah.
Why could it not change again? So in the book, we have Alexander Therian creating what's called the Babel Initiative. Basically, hey, let's all put aside our differences, let's come together and let's all hug, hold hands and all this different stuff. Right? Yep. And so Babylon, I think, is going to become the center of world power. I think, countries will eventually sign up for this Babel Initiative idea. And they'll be like, this makes so much sense, especially in light of the destruction of Damascus, with the threat of nuclear possibility. I mean, we've got to do something radical.
So now just to stop you there. So again, you think this is going to happen in reality, and yet it's in the book too.
It's in the book.
So it's fiction for now.
It's fiction for now. But again, everything that was written as fiction was very well researched.
Yeah.
All right. And so, even the characters that we came up with, we really wanted to present them to the very best of our ability in their cultural relevance and how they might think. Even some differences between, some of the different factions within Islam. We did our best to try to, really keep those differences so that people could appreciate that.
But I mean, it's not out of character to do that. I mean, like in movies, we see all this all the time where it's called I was looking for my notes where I'd written that down. I'd forgotten the term, but predictive programming.
Right.
So movies are specifically put out there as hints from those who maybe know something's going to happen.
That's right.
And that was just in a movie. That can't be real. And then
Or
there
just
it is
watch
in
The
front.
Simpsons and like,
Yeah, right, yeah.
how in the world do they know these things? But
So this is sort of the antithesis of that. This is like predictive programming, but hey, this could actually happen, and this is pushing you toward biblical things, not things of the world.
Well, again, the Bible gives us the bullet points of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to put a little bit of flesh on this skeleton, right? We don't know 100%, but we're like, well, based on this, and this, and this seems pretty plausible, right? And that Babylon should be rebuilt. I think that's the best and easiest solution.
If you can build Neom in the center of the desert,
yes,
why not next door in Iraq? I mean,
exactly.
Really.
And look, if you're a trillionaire and you got a bunch of money to throw around and you sort of want to do your own thing, I think it makes a lot of sense because Iraq is relatively impoverished, but they have some decent resources, right? They're not third world, but they're not first world either. They could certainly use an infusion of cash, and I think if you had such a thing, a person could create their own state. Essentially, they could essentially buy out the people, not necessarily politically, but giving gifts. By building infrastructure, and you become the de facto mayor of your own city because you built the thing. And people become emboldened to you because you gave them so much money. And so I think this could easily happen. And then there's, of course, the whole technological thing, right? And so what we sort of speculate in the book is that there will be a lot of discoveries that will come together. A lot of ancient wisdom will be unearthed. And then it's going to be in the Babylon Knowledge Center. Okay.
Okay. So they borrow from the time of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel.
Nephilim, and there's genetic discoveries, and there's ancient manuscripts that nobody's ever seen.
Borrow something from modern Neom, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And on the walls, I think you're going to have all of the ancient gods in all of their glory, if you will. But again, I think this is where it's all going to happen because this is where it all started. Right? It was Nimrod who established Babylon. He created that city. And so, again, we've talked about Nimrod before in previous shows, but Nimrod, excuse me, Mr. Let's Rebel, he was known as Ninurta in the ancient world. Guess what? He was actually the son of Enlil. So Enlil is Satan. So according to the ancient Near East version, Ninurta, he's the son of Enlil. He's given the Tablet of Destinies, by which he rules the world. He's a demigod. He quite possibly was Gilgamesh, another name for him. There's lots of dots you have to connect, but you start looking at it like, oh, they're all kind of the same thing, And and I kind of teased this out in the last show we had, but Gog. Okay, so get this, right? So talk about Gog and Magog, right? So the name Gog, it comes from Sumerian, Gug, all right?
Okay.
Gug comes from the word Ug, which is similar to Og, right? King Og of Bashan. It means death or enmity. It's one of the various names for Enlil, who is Satan, all right? So I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Because I was trying to figure out, okay, where does Gog fit into this whole thing? It just means death or enmity. It's like an intensification of the name death or enmity. And where does death and enmity start? Genesis 3:15, right? I will cause enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. My mind is like blowing here, right? So I think Gog is none other than the beast. I think he is this hybridized being who's going to come. The Bible talks about him, but all that to say that you have this incredible culmination of ancient technology, ancient lore. It all started in Babylon, and I think that's where it's all going to go back to.
And we try and make it so complicated, but then you just go back to the word study, and all it means is enmity.
Yes.
How simple could it be? And sometimes we get so complicated, we don't see the simplicity of it. Yeah. So now you kind of mentioned the son of Satan, and that made me think, okay, wait a minute, I got to bring back to this. So is that the seed of Satan just as the seed of the woman? Is that what you see as the quote-unquote seed?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Well, that's why the study of the Nephilim is important. Because there we see sort of a real-world application, if you will, of where spiritual beings come down and they breed with terrestrial women, right? So how can you have this? And again, that's what I explored in Corrupting Image Volume 1. I was really trying to understand how you could have this. And it was amazing. I read this book by Dr. Werner Gitt. In the beginning was information. And he had a series of axioms. And he said that information is a non-material entity that requires a physical medium. And it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is incredible, right? So, you think about, take a seed, right? Take a watermelon seed. What's inside of that? You got the husk, you got the kernel, keep going. You get down to the chromosomes, you get down to the genes. Beyond that, you get down to the DNA. What's in that? You got nucleic acids. What's inside of that? Information, right? Information. How do you touch information? You don't. You can't touch it, and yet it's being stored in a physical medium, right? And don't we send little packets of information all day long when we're on our cell phones and our computers? We're sending packets of information, which we understand is just on, off, right? It's in that binary sense. In a DNA sense, it's a base 4 instead of a base 2, but it's still information. That's what a seed is information. So yes, Satan has information. So he simply needs some way to communicate that information into a physical medium.
Hey, Torah fans, I just want to take a minute on behalf of everyone here at A Rood Awakening to say thank you. Because without you, nothing happens. No Shabbat Night Live, no MichaelRood.tv app, no social media updates, no new videos on YouTube or Rumble. Without you, no one would see anything from Michael Rood or any of the other guest teachers we have on our programs. There's no corporate safety net with a pile of money in case there's not enough. There's no government grant that keeps things going. And we don't ask companies outside this ministry to pay for commercials. In fact, some have offered and we have declined because that's not the way Yeshua did it. Yeshua's ministry needed donations from his followers. Several times in the Gospels, we see that Yeshua asked the disciples to buy something. Without money, how would they do that? They all left their jobs to follow him. And not to mention, the disciples even had Judas to keep track of the money. We don't like asking you to donate. That's uncomfortable for anyone, but we do want to thank you for doing it. You are the reason for every Rood Awakening. Thank you.
Okay, this blew my mind. So I did this, as I was doing the studies, I came across this guy named Chris out of Reno, Nevada. He was a person who had leukemia and he needed a bone marrow transplant. So a German donor gave some bone marrow, and there was a forensics lab that was tracking his before and after, kind of just see what was happening, right? So a few months in, after getting this bone marrow transplant, the DNA in his blood begins to change to that of his donor, right? A little while after that, they look at his semen and they find that of his donor, right? They find the DNA of his donor in his semen, right? And Chris is like, wow, it's pretty weird that I can disappear and somebody else appear, right? Okay, so wow, that's pretty amazing, right? If you get a bone marrow transplant, that's your essence. In the Hebrew, it's the word etzem, right? So your etzem, your bone is like it's you, okay?
That's where your stem cells, a lot of stem cells are created.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And so if Satan could somehow give his information to somebody, what would happen? Well, we know from Chris from Reno, Nevada, he begins to change to that of his donor. So, exactly how Satan's gonna do it, I don't know. I'm not that smart. He's got things that I don't know about, but somehow, and I actually think if he might overshadow somebody, just like when he entered into Judas, what was Judas called? He was called the son of perdition. I think if that connection had remained, I think that Judas may have begun to change genetically.
So is this where we kind of get into maybe the mark of the beast versus the mark of God?
Yes.
Where you want to take on Yeshua's spirit, and therefore you act in as an extension of him, to put it simply. Same thing with Satan.
Exactly.
Implanting this idea, you are worshiping him, therefore you are now an extension of him, and you're acting on his will.
Yes, and that's why I came up with the title, Corrupting the Image. I think that Satan has been trying to corrupt the image of God and recreate it in his own image, right? And I think if he can do that, it would be a checkmate against God. Now, thankfully, he'll never quite get there, right? But he's gonna try, and he's gonna come very close. To the point where the power of the saints is completely destroyed, right? Where it seems like all hope is lost. Satan's pretty much won. People have taken on this mark because they're going to do it for their own selfish reasons, right? They're going to become a god. They'll have all these superpowers and everything, and they can fight against the bad guys, God and his army that's coming. And this will be why people will take this on. Yeah.
And Israel is at the center of all this still.
Israel's at the center.
In the book. Okay.
Yep.
And maybe it may flesh out like that too.
Well, you know, and we kind of tease the idea that I think the Antichrist is going to, things will happen on the biblical timeline, let's put it that way, according to the biblical feasts, right? And this is one reason I think we should be studying the feasts and living the feasts, because you begin to see these things, begin to come out, right? So, we often talk about how we think that the return of Jesus will probably be on the Feast of Trumpets, right?
The fall feasts are obviously his return,
right?
And how that comes out is, there's
there's
a lot of opinions out there.
A lot of opinions about that. I personally think that he'll come back on the Feast of Trumpets. I think the judgment of the sheep and the goats will happen on Yom Kippur, and then we all get to enjoy the Sukkot, right, together, right? But to get there, I think this is where it's very likely that we will have the assassination of the Antichrist. I think it will happen on Passover.
Okay. Now, why? Okay, that's curious.
Yeah.
Because just first of all, because Michael has a timeline on the Revelation, right? And this does not conflict with that.
Okay.
This is adding, this is adding pieces to that, and maybe some understanding in between, and maybe how this all fleshes out. So I want people to understand that we're not railing against that. We're just saying, hey, here's some things that we may want to plug in together, because maybe it's not all one idea. Maybe there's some ideas that mesh here.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that as a caveat. So 3.5 years. I think I know why you're saying that.
Yeah.
Because the feasts are conveniently 6 months apart.
Isn't that
right?
amazing?
3.5 years. That's why
exactly
you think Passover. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if we start with Sukkot and then just work our way backwards, okay. So what do we know? So I take the 70th week of Daniel. I think that's sort of a big picture of sort of the end. There's gonna be a midpoint. So I think the two witnesses come for 1,260 days. That's the time of their ministry, 42 months, all right, 3.5 years. And I think they're gonna be telling the world, hey, it's time to shape up or ship out, right? And the world's like, no, we don't want that. And I think the Antichrist will kill them immediately before Passover. And then when Passover is happening, he will then go into the temple, declare himself to be God, show himself to be God. And I think the demonstration is, hey, I just killed these two. Nobody else could do that. And this is when the world's gonna say, who can make war with the beast? So again, that's all in the book, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, not to give too many spoilers, but let's just say somehow the Antichrist is going to die. Okay, so you have to read the book for that. But our hero has something to do with that, and but imagine if Satan sort of has a sense of how this is going to happen. If he wants to give the ultimate middle finger to God. What would be better than to go into God's temple, on God's holy mountain, God's holy space, and to defile his temple on his holy day? The very same day, mind you, Passover, when God made war against all the gods of Egypt, right? So when God had the victory and destroyed the Egyptian gods, who were working for Satan, of course, and now Satan can say, oh yeah, guess what? I'm gonna stub my nose at you and give you the middle finger, and I can go into your place and I can show how ineffective you are with your people rubber stamping what I'm doing, right? So I think that would be the ultimate. And if it were his blood that were shed on the altar, wouldn't that be the ultimate abomination of desolation, in my opinion?
Wow.
So that's kind of how it goes down in the book. But yeah, so I think that'll happen. And so then we have 3.5 years going forward from that point when we get to the fall feast, right? And that puts us, again, that's 6 months out. So we end up right at the fall feast, and that'll be books 2 and 3 in the Regenesis Code series. And I'd like people to really pray about, this becoming a Netflix series or Hulu series, right? Like, we don't want to put this on PureFlix, right?
Okay.
We're not trying to go for the Christian audience. We're trying to go for the non-Christian audience. We want to reach people. We think we can reach the the non-Christian world with this story in a way that, like The Matrix or, Avengers or something like that.
So have people discover the, I hate the term, but it's a term, Easter eggs, right?
Yes.
Have them discover the secret little things in here, look them up, do their own research, and maybe pick up the Bible to sort of see where all this comes from. Is that the idea?
That's the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I understand we just have a couple minutes left, but we have a minute here, or 30 seconds to be exact, to play something you have put together. What are we seeing here?
This is the promo video for Regenesis Code. So Mornay is really good at graphics, and so he made this thing, but it's all based on Regenesis Code.
So is this something you're giving to people like Netflix and other studios to see if they will be interested in doing this? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look. Okay, wow, there you go. Okay, so this is Regenesis Code. So if you know somebody at Netflix, if you know a higher up, if you're buddy with somebody at Angel Studios or something like that, tell them about this book. I mean, get the book, show them it, and hey, introduce them to Doug if you want to do that. We can certainly get you in touch, or you can just go to Doug's website, right?
Yep. DouglasHamp.com.
DouglasHamp.com, and hopefully we get this made into him. I think this will make a fabulous movie. I mean, all your books. If you do one, maybe you can do some of the others too, because there's some good stuff here. So thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here. And yes, we will definitely talk more about this because you've got more books coming.
Yes.
Books 2 and 3.
Yes.
What is the timeline for those, by the way?
Oh.
In your estimation. I mean, I know it takes forever and sometimes things go awry.
Hopefully the next 2 years we have the next one out.
Okay.
And,
All right, very good. Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll have a movie by then. We really pray that you get the opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
And fiction sometimes becomes reality. You may have a download here that you don't realize, and Yehovah is saying, I'm going to give you this little hint, Doug, and it's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
So you never know. But good. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Hey, share this on YouTube. Share it everywhere you can. You heard Doug's heart. I mean, this is not meant for pure flicks. This is not just meant for. I mean, of course you can read it if you want, but this is for folks that will never pick up a Bible, who will never watch a Christian movie. Right? They won't listen to you. Great. Read a book. Here's a nice book to have. Just go ahead and read it. They'll discover things in there. They'll be curious. Share this on YouTube. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Instagram. Share it everywhere. Telegram. Anywhere you are online, share this with folks that you know. We want to get the word out. And please, share the Rood Awakening YouTube page and everything else we have out there. Show people that they can get some interesting perspectives on faith that maybe they're not hearing anywhere else, okay? That's what a Rood Awakening is all about. Thank you for making it possible. Your donations make this all possible. Thank you as well for that. So, until next week, we bid you Shavua Tov.
Whenever and wherever you are watching this broadcast, it represents hundreds of man-hours of production and post-production, and then it goes out to the world in several different languages. Why is this possible? It's because people like you support this ministry. We do our best to get this out freely to the entire world. Freely you have received. Now, this is your opportunity to do as Yeshua said, and freely give. Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon. And I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.